Maitland River watershed was covered by a large sheet of ice. Who can tell me the name of a large sheet of ice that is several meters thick? It's called, starts with a G.
Glacier.
Right on, glacier. It's called a glacier. And as the ice melted, the Maitland River was carved out of the earth. Now, we know the Maitland River is about really 240 million years old. So in the Silurian time period. And many different First Nations people, a few hundred years ago, were inhabitants of the land around the Maitland River. And they hunted in the forests, they harvested foods from the wetlands, and caught fish in the river. So imagine that this is our river. Could we use it for eating and getting fish and as a use? Could we swim in it? Could we kayak and canoe on it? Yes. But in the early 1800s, European settlers began to arrive in the area, and they found fertile land for farming and forests full of wildlife and a river that provided ample food and water and even power for their mills. It was an outstanding environment for settlement, and the settlers prospered because we know that this land has very good conditions for cropping. Well, years went by, and occasional storms drenched the area, and high winds whipped through the trees and blew leaves into the water, providing food for the bugs that live in the water. So at this stage, everything's natural and happening the way it should. So here we have trees that are just dropping leaves into the river, and then you can just put it here. Thanks. Now at first the towns were small. Oh, here we are. Years went by, and gradually more settlers came to the area, and many towns were created along the banks of the river. And wetlands and forests were cleared to build houses and businesses. And rains washed loose soil from construction sites into the river. So now we've got more building going on and exposed land or soil as homes are being built. So we have what we call construction sites. And at first the towns were small, and upstream farmers planted crops to feed the town's growing population. Some of these crops grew right up to the banks of the river, and especially during storms, fertilizer washed off the land and into the water. And in my day, I can remember it being atrazine. My dad used always putting atrazine on the fields. Other farmers would have kept pigs and other animals in the barnyard. And as rainwater drained out of the barnyard, oh no, it carried some of the manure into the little creek behind the farm. And that creek flows into the river. So now would you drink the water?
No.
Not looking quite as appetizing. Let's go right here. Oh, you tried to send me that. It would even be questionable whether we should even swim in it. Well, as the towns grew more and more, the people were building more houses and businesses, and streets became paved. Years ago, the driveways in towns were gravel, and the water could get away and percolate down through the gravel. But now the rainwater have no place to go because the streets are paved and the driveways are paved. So a storm drain was installed to collect all the water that ran off the streets and the rooftops. And this drain dumped dirty water directly into the river. And since the towns were growing, something had to be done about the large amount of sewage that was being produced. So a sewer system had to be installed. And once this wastewater was treated, it was discharged into the river. Now a sewer system works very well. A sewage treatment plant works well unless it overflows from a heavy storm. And then actual raw sewage can get into a waterway. And some cities have dumped raw sewage into, like Montreal was dumping raw sewage into the St. Lawrence River for hundreds of years. The same with Victoria, BC. Crazy. Well, word spread about the fertile soils in the area, and more settlers moved and bought farms. Sanitary sewers did not exist out in the country. So rural landowners had to rely on underground septic systems to treat their waste. Some homeowners did not empty their septic tanks regularly, and poorly treated sewage seeped into the river. Gross.